Hey everybody, it's Brian. So I am finally done with this shed project, and I've had the time to go through around 100 hours of video that I took over the course of doing this project over a few weeks. And here we are. So starting off, I had to pull everything out of the shed, all my yard stuff, as well as some of the pool things. I also had a bunch of random junk in there that I probably should have got rid of a while ago. I also had extra materials from some of the indoor house projects, like a bathroom remodel that needed to come out. Next thing I did was remove the floor here. This is pea gravel. I plan on reusing this gravel as a base to go under pavers I'm going to put down. So I take the time to shovel all this up and put it in buckets and put it off to the side. I started digging some of the floor out here. I'm going to have to dig down quite a bit to make sure that the pavers are level with the rest of my yard. After digging out some of the dirt, I started tearing the shed down. Now this is really tricky because on three sides I have no extra space. This shed sits in what I refer to as a little panhandle of my yard. I've got neighbors' fences on three sides and no ability to do this from the outside of the shed, so I've got to tear it down from the inside. Now this is really old wood, so a lot of it is super dense and really heavy. I'm cutting out 2-foot strips of the roof and letting that fall down and taking it out that way. I do need to leave this one wall on the side up because it's actually the fence between me and the neighbor here. So I'm not ready to tear this wall down. I'm going to have to leave it up until we can rebuild the fence. Next, I'm starting on pavers. I did dig out more dirt just to get everything properly leveled. Then I'm dumping down some rocks that I had from the front yard that I don't want there anymore. And then all the pea gravel that I took up from the original shed floor. Sand goes on top of that gravel, and then I'm placing the pavers one at a time and leveling those out one by one. I have in the back of my yard a retaining wall that's about 2 feet tall. I'm extending that back into this space a little bit because the shed that I'm putting in is not going to take up the whole space. I've got an ugly retaining wall in the front of my house that I want to rebuild. It's got a bunch of different blocks in it, all mixed matched, and it looks like a mess. And fortunately, some of the blocks in that wall match these in the back, so I'm stealing those, and I'm able to extend the wall with the same stones. It looks all the same and looks nice and uniform. Now, my neighbor builds fences for a living. He built the replacement fence when I was out of town, and now I'm back and I'm going through and staining my side just to help the wood last longer. With the new fence stained, now I'm sanding in the pavers so that they lock into place. This is just dumping sand on top of the pavers to fill in the cracks that exist between each of the stones. And I leave extra sand on the pavers because the sand will settle and this extra sand will help fill in the cracks better and provide more support for keeping all of these things in place. Now, I hired a company to come and remove all the debris for me. I was planning on doing it myself, but when I looked at the cost of renting a roll-off dumpster and the dump fee, it was only about $100 more to pay these guys to come take it all out for me. And that saves me a bunch of hours and soreness to the body because tearing down that shed, man, that took a lot, and holding saws up above your head for hours on end and moving all that wood out. It's worth the $100 for me not to have to move all this stuff to the front yard. Now in the old shed, I had a bunch of firewood that's going to need a new home, and the shed I'm putting in the old spot is not going to be nearly as big as the old space I had. What I'm doing is I'm building a second shed on the side of my house that's smaller, that's just going to be for the firewood and barbecue supplies. So with this shed built, I'm able to clean up all the big pile of firewood, get that all put away. I did spend the time to cut all the pieces so that they fit nicely in the shed. Historically, I just cut them as I needed them, but I took the time to cut them all now. That way they all fit in and they stack nicely in the new shed. I do plan on extending the bamboo on my back fence all the way to the corner here. I built a small box because I had the wood and wanted to just make sure that this part was contained a little bit better. The rest of the way I am going to plant it in the ground. Now this bamboo will run underneath the fence and grow on the other side, but my neighbors asked me to plant it this way because he wants the bamboo to grow under the fence. He'd like to have some in his yard. Now, I do have to leave it empty for now. I bought a couple of extra pots of bamboo here, but the rest I will divide from my existing bamboo. I can't divide it right now just because the new shoots are coming in. And if I divided it right now, those new shoots, a lot of them would die. The ones that did grow in would be stunted and super short. So I'm just going to leave it bare for now. And in a month or so, I'll be able to divide my existing bamboo and fill the rest of this in. All my tarps and covers from the old shed are going to go into bins to keep them a little bit neater, and the bins will go in the new shed. There's also a big pile of dirt here I have to move, left over from the excavation of the floor. And this dirt I'm just going to move to the front yard. Front yard's a mess right now, and I'll either give it away or I'll be able to spread it out. I'm still deciding what to do up front. Next, I'm going to work on building the big shed. This is a 7-foot by 7-foot shed, which is not nearly as big as what I had back here. But as I mentioned earlier, I stored a lot of junk in here that I didn't really need to keep. So this new shed will be big enough to store everything that I want to have back here. And I won't have to make any compromises. Now, I got about halfway through before I realized some of the screws were missing, and it took a bunch of calls and complaining to the hardware store to get them to agree to open up one of their existing boxes that they still had and give me the screws out of that instead of making me tear this all down and return it, which is what they told me to do first. With the missing screws in hand, I'm able to finish building the shed. And with the shed built, I can start putting stuff back in. Some of the equipment that I had back here, like my mower and edger and the gas for those things, I'm putting in my garage now. I don't have any grass left in my backyard anywhere, so I don't need the mower back here at all. It'll go in the garage. I can pull it out, do the front yard. Super easy. And that helps me conserve space back here. The rest of the stuff goes back in the shed. Now this wall here is a wall to my pool shed. It's got all the pool equipment on the other side, the filter, heater, and pump. The whole thing needs to be rebuilt. It's fallen apart, but this is a project for another spring. For now, just to make it look a little bit better, I bought these reeds and wasn't too expensive. I'm putting these up just to make it look a little bit nicer, cover it up, and you won't notice how ugly the shed is when you're back here. With everything put away, I can finish the cleanup. Now this includes pressure washing, which I did a few weeks ago, and you can see video on that. The very last thing to get cleaned is the pool. Between the normal winter dirt and all of the extra dirt from the shed project, it takes a few days and several runs of the robot to get all this dirt out. That's it for this one. This will make maintaining my yard, all my plants, a lot easier. Everything's in a good spot. It's all clean. I'm not having to navigate through junk piles to get to fertilizers or tools or anything like that. So it will make my life easier for the rest of this year and years to come, and make it easier for me to take care of all my bananas and palms and everything else growing in the yard. So thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions on what I did, how I built it, or why I did or didn't do something, feel free to drop a comment below. Like and subscribe if you haven't, to learn more about growing tropical and subtropical plants in cold weather environments.